No two people write exactly alike. The principles of handwriting identification are based on the basic scientific truths about handwriting. The first and foremost of these scientific truths is that no two people write exactly alike in an extended handwriting sample. The use of a signature in legal and financial transactions is possible because unique characteristics in an individual's handwriting distinguish it from every other handwriting. This principle enables document examiners to differentiate genuine and non-genuine writing and to identify the author of a sample of handwriting. The second basic scientific truth about handwriting is all writing contains natural variation, so that no two writing samples by the same writer will be exactly the same. There are slight deviations in all handwriting characteristics. The document examiner must learn to distinguish between natural variation and a different writer. Writing is a complex act and a highly developed skill. Many influences affect the development of each person's writing ability, resulting in the unique style of each individual writer. These influences continue to occur throughout the life of a writer. Heading: Physical factors. Physical factors include hand-eye coordination, flexibility of wrist movement, and the grip of the writing instrument, which play a part in the development of handwriting skills. Other factors include attitude and discipline. If handwriting is important to the writer, he or she will expend more effort in learning to write, taking care to adhere more closely to the written model. The writer will continue practicing until reaching a skill level that is comfortable. The process of learning to write begins in young children long before formal schooling. The first step involves the visual observation of one's surroundings. Children see many forms that they will eventually identify and duplicate. They develop a concept of what writing looks like. Gradually, they learn to recognize the letters of the alphabet and numbers. Each person sees the shapes of letters a little differently. This is the beginning of the individuality that develops in everyone's handwriting. Writing is affected by what we see and what we remember. We are surrounded by stimuli that influence our understanding of letters and words. Billboards, posters, magazines, and television all contribute to our learning the identity of letter forms. At the same time, children are learning to recognize letters. They begin to develop hand-eye coordination. Children's play is preparation for adult activities. They like to imitate their elders in their play. For example, children pretend to write by scribbling on any available surface, from writing paper to walls. Young children actually begin learning to write when they start scribbling with a pencil or a crayon. Coloring is a precursor to writing and helps children develop coordination of eye and finger. Writing begins formally when children are given paper and pencil and taught to create a form following a model. They trace the letter design with their pencil several times and then attempt to duplicate that letter design on a white paper. They struggle to control their movements until they can copy a form. At first, the children are given large, fat pencils and are taught to form ball and stick letters. As their skills increase, they are taught to write smaller with finer writing instruments. Children learn hand printing in the primary grades. Cursive writing is generally introduced by the end of the second grade or the beginning of the third grade. Students deviate from the standard penmanship forms from the time they begin to write. In fact, copybook style writing is so rare that anyone who writes perfect Palmer could easily be identified because the writing would be unique. Several major factors control the success of mastering handwriting. The powers of observation and ability to remember the forms observed are two principal considerations. Another major factor in the development of handwriting is the writer's attempt to reproduce the forms observed. Some children have more control over their muscles at an earlier age than others. Some are more patient and will spend more time developing their writing skill. Others will spend more time experimenting with different letter forms. We can see a handwriting of a young child and the differences. An important factor influencing the development of writing is the ability to overcome the mechanical and physical impediments to writing, that is, placing the paper at a proper angle, holding the paper in place with one hand to steady it while writing with the other, and learning to control the pen or pencil and direct the movements to get a model shape. Each writer has innate powers of observation, capacity for graphic expression, and technical execution. It takes many years of practice to develop skill and proficiency at writing. Graphic maturity is reached when the motor skills of the writer are fully developed and the writer no longer has to focus attention on the act of writing. At this point, the writer concentrates on the content and lets his or her subconscious handle the execution of the writing act. The writing has become a habit. The method of construction of various letter combinations and words is set. Some people never reach graphic maturity. Their writing remains at a low form level throughout their life. The writer may not have mastered writing for many reasons. A person who does not find a need to write will not develop skill in writing. Lack of formal schooling also results in poorly developed handwriting. Each person attains a level of skill that he or she finds acceptable. The more an individual practices writing, the better the skill, unless the writer has an impediment to learning. Before the advent of modern office equipment, penmanship practice continued into adulthood. Emphasis is no longer placed on handwriting skill nowadays. Even the methods of teaching handwriting are more relaxed in modern times. Children are not drilled in proper procedures for handwriting like our forefathers. Little attention is now paid to posture, positioning of the paper, and proper grip of the writing instrument. Next heading, physiology of writing. Just how does the act of writing occur? Skilled writing uses arm, wrist, and finger movement. The arm moves across the paper as writing is produced so that the pen is presented at the proper location for writing. The arm may be in continual movement or it may rest on the writing surface and move in segments as necessary. The wrist is flexed to assist in the movement of the writing instrument. The wrist will bend to assist the writer in reaching the writing area. When the wrist can no longer reach, the arm slides forward toward the right margin to extend the writing line. The arm is pulled back to the left margin to start the next line of writing. The paper may be adjusted as well as to assist the writer in reaching the available writing surface. The fingers work together to produce the forms of writing. When one finger pushes the writing instrument, another offers resistance which controls the motion. The contraction and release flow together to push the pen away and pull it back again. The strokes turning leftward and downward require contraction of the muscles, and the upward and the rightward strokes involve release of the muscles. Thus, downward writing is better controlled. Right-handed writers use their thumb to exert pressure on the writing instrument to push it horizontally in a rightward and upward direction. The middle finger pushes the writing instrument leftward both diagonally and horizontally, while the thumb and index finger pull the instrument down forward towards the baseline, which is imaginary line to which the writing returns. Because the writer movement is from left to right, the right-handed writer has the advantage of being able to see the writing as it is being executed. The left-handed writer must adjust his or her hand to compensate for the fact that the hand is covering the line of writing as it is being executed. Many left-handed writers hook their hand over the writing so that they can see what they are writing. Skilled writers use a combination of finger, wrist and arm movements to accomplish the act of writing. Poor writers use only their fingers and have to constantly lift and move their hand to reach across the page. Some writers use only arm movement, which is more difficult. Writing becomes automatic to the point where the operation not only requires almost no conscious direction, but is frequently beyond the control of the mind or the hand. This is evident when someone tries unsuccessfully to disguise his or her handwriting. The habits are so ingrained that the writer cannot eliminate all the characteristics comprising his or her writing style. Next heading, pen scope. Pen scope is the distance the pen covers before the writer moves his or her hand to continue the writing act. It is possible to identify the pen scope by the breaks between letters, syllables or words. This is one of the factors that can assist in the identification of a particular writer because the pen scope is an individual characteristic. Writing created using only finger movement, that's one example. Writing created using wrist movement, that's another example. Writing created using the whole arm, that's third example. How can one distinguish between the finger movement and the wrist movement? The writer using finger movement only must constantly readjust his or her hand when writing across the page. This constant adjustment can be seen in abrupt turns and breaks in letters. It is primarily used by unskilled writers and indicates unfamiliarity with the writing process. The writing will show frequent stops and pauses to relocate the pen because there is little lateral movement during the formation of letters using finger motion only. Wrist motion results in longer continuous motion before adjusting the pen position. Often the baseline forms an arc in writing because the hand swings from left to right. Phrases and words are completed in a single movement of the writing instrument. Modern writers have not been taught to use whole arm movement when writing. Although arm movement was used by the writing masters in the 19th century, in modern times this method is employed primarily on large writing surfaces like blackboards. Writers using whole arm movement generally write larger. The movement can be extended across the page without having to readjust the pen position. Next heading, factors that influence handwriting. An individual's handwriting changes over his or her lifetime. The most obvious change takes place from childhood through adolescence. Graphic maturity is generally reached towards the end of adolescence. Gradual changes will continue to occur thereafter. Many factors will affect the act of writing, although few factors will affect the handwriting so that it cannot be identified. The penmanship system taught in schools influences handwriting. The primary systems currently being taught are Palmer, Zehner-Bloser and D. Nation. Although these systems are similar, some differences in letter forms and methods of construction exist. The characteristics learned from a penmanship system are called class characteristics because they are writing habits that are shared by many people. Although students learn the same system of writing, each develops unique characteristics that distinguish his or her writing from all other writers. These are called individual characteristics and they are either consciously created or subconsciously executed. A writer will copy an admitted style or a letter form. He or she will experiment with different designs to add unique and individual letter forms to his or her writing. More mature writers create more individual letter forms. Some writing habits are so subtle that the writer is not aware of them, like breathing. They occur without conscious effort. The writer does not plan them. Pressure patterns are example of these subconscious habits. The writer is not aware of the variations of pressure when executing writing. Hooks and ticks are another example of writing habits that fit into this category. The writer is unaware of the slight flick of the wrist that creates these hooks. These characteristics are found at the beginning and ending of the words. They may be found in any standalone letter forms. Hooks or ticks may appear at the beginning of the specific letter forms or may be found in all beginning or terminal strokes of the words. Some habits are developed by the writer when learning to write. These are consciously executed characteristics. Diacritics or eye dots may be consciously executed characteristics, particularly circle eye dots or placement of eye dots or eye bars or T bars in a location that is pleasing to the writer. Some writers use printed capital letters in place of cursive or add a flourish to a letter or delete extra strokes. The writer chooses a particular letter form. These are consciously created handwriting characteristics. Penmanship systems teach eye dots as static, that is, the writing instrument touches the paper and is immediately removed, leaving a dot on the page. Many writers execute the eye dot quickly, resulting in a dash instead of a dot. This dash may also have a specific direction. It can be horizontal, diagonal or vertical. It may change direction, resembling a hook or a V formation. Some examples of dots. The first signature is a genuine signature, second is a copy. Now, table, principles that assist in identification of handwriting. First principle, no two people write exactly alike. Second principle, individual characteristics that are unique to a particular writer exist in every person's handwriting, distinguishing it from every other handwriting. Third principle, the act of writing is a skill learned through repetition until it becomes a habit. Fourth, a person's normal form of writing is based on mental images of learned letter designs. Fifth, people stylize their writing from the method they were taught. Sixth, people adopt writing styles by copying those they like. 7. Many writing habits are subconscious and therefore cannot be changed by the writer. 8. A person's handwriting changes over the course of his or her lifetime. Next heading, familial characteristics. Family members frequently share some handwriting characteristics. These are called familial characteristics. Children copy the writing style of their parents or siblings. They generally have plenty of opportunity to observe their parents' handwriting. Many children practice their parents' signatures until they become proficient at imitating them. Some groups of people who share a common bond develop handwriting characteristics that are unique to that group. Accountants, engineers, and draftsmen fall into this category. People from foreign countries also share some common characteristics resulting from system of writing they were taught. Unless the document examiner is aware of these influences, he or she could mistake national or group characteristics for individual characteristic of writing. Next heading, features of handwriting. Handwriting features called characteristics are used to identify handwriting. Characteristics that are shared by many writers are called class characteristics. Individual characteristics are those that are unique to a writer. It is a combination of class and individual characteristics that are used to identify an individual's handwriting. Characteristics of handwriting. The characteristics of writing that occur in handwriting include the appearance of the writing and the method of construction. They cover the range of writing of the writer. Class characteristics are those features shared by a large number of people. In handwriting, they are usually identified by the penmanship system a writer has learned. Although all writers deviate from the penmanship system they learned, many of the characteristics are retained. Class characteristics assist in identifying a writer, but are not sufficient identifiers to limit the writing as belonging to one individual writer. Some deviations of penmanship standards are so common they fall into the category of class characteristics, although they are not part of any penmanship system. An example would be Greek letter epsilon. Individual characteristics are those deviations from the norm that writers make when they do not follow the rules of penmanship. Individual peculiarities creep into everyone's handwriting as they modify and stylize their writing. These modifications provide the strongest identification. No other writer duplicates exactly all the peculiarities that show up in a writer's handwriting. Although many writers may have similar individual characteristics in their writing, it is a unique combination of characteristics that identify a writer. No two writers share all the same characteristics. Each writer's characteristics are unique to that writer. What are the characteristics or features that make up writing? The features of handwriting are classified for identification purposes. When the writer puts pen to paper, he or she uses movement, spatial relationships, and form. Movement heading. Movement includes direction, slant, rhythm, pressure pattern, line quality, and speed. The direction of writing is dictated by the rule of penmanship, but not everyone adheres to the rules. It is necessary to know the normal progress of writing across the page to determine deviations from that norm. Slant is part of the direction of the writing but is measured separately. Speed and rhythm are affected by the direction of writing. Pressure is also related to movement. Next heading, direction. Rules of penmanship dictate that writing progresses from left to right on a horizontal plane. This is all for English. Each line is placed below the preceding one from the top to the bottom of the page. Letters return to an imaginary baseline in a rhythmic motion. Most alphabets begin their letter formations at the baseline and move upward or to the right. Some letters begin in the mid zone and move left, such as A, C, D, G, and O. Writing requires a movement through space. Writers start at the imaginary baseline and move up or down to form their letter. They adhere to rules that govern the location of each letter, either above or below the baseline. They are taught to divide their writing into three zones: upper, middle, and lower. Writers are taught the proper proportions among the zones of writing. They learn the rules of size, slant, and spacing between letters and words of writing. Slant heading. Slant refers to the direction in which the writing leans. It may lean to the right or the left, or it may be vertical. Slant may also be variable. Slant is sometimes called the slope. When a writer tries to disguise his or her handwriting, that individual will usually change the slant because that will change the pictorial effect of the writing. Next is rhythm heading. Rhythm refers to the writer's consistency of the slant combined with the even return to the baseline. Skilled writers produce more rhythmic writing than unskilled writers. Writing rhythm can have a consistent or a variable slant and an even or erratic return to the baseline. It mostly falls somewhere in between. Rhythm is usually disrupted when a writer attempts to copy another's handwriting and may be one of the most significant factors in the identification of a forgery. Rhythm is also an indicator of a skill level. The writer who has a well-developed rhythm consistent with an even return to the baseline is a more highly skilled writer than one whose rhythm is poorly developed. Heading pressure. There are two types of pressure in handwriting. Grip pressure, which refers to the hand's grasp on the writing instrument, and the amount of pressure used to push the pen across the paper. It varies for different writers from light to heavy. The writing instrument will not function properly if the pressure is too heavy or too light. Most writers apply lighter pressure on the upstrokes when they are pushing the pen away and heavy pressure on the downstrokes when they bring the pen towards them. These pressure patterns are individualized and subconscious, therefore becoming strong identifying factors on handwriting. When the pen comes in contact with the paper, it indents the paper. The writing surface affects the depth of the indentation in a paper. A hard surface reduces the indentation and a soft surface allows deeper embossing on the paper. Next heading, line quality. The smoothness of the line of writing represents the line quality or the line value. The skill of the writer determines whether the line quality represents high or low quality. Speed is generally the most important determinant while measuring line quality. Slow writing is tremulous and lacks good line quality. Slow writing is the result of lack of skill or copying another style. It can be an important consideration in identification of a writer. Fast writing is smoother and more fluid. There are numerous indicators of speed in writing of which line quality is the principal one. The intricacies of the letter form and as well as embellishments are part of the line quality. Next heading, speed. Speed of writing differs from various reasons. Some writers think fast and try to write as fast as they think. Some are impatient and always in a hurry. Slow writers may be deliberate and meticulous or less familiar with the writing process. Writers trade speed for legibility. The faster the writing, the more difficult it is to read. Speed reduces legibility. Fast writers simplify the letter forms and slut the endings on the words. Letters widen and the height is shortened. I dots seem to be jabbed and carelessly placed. T bars are sweeping or tapered and may be joined at the following word. Connecting strokes widens. Word endings become blurred and decrease in size. Endings are short, abbreviated and impossible to read. As fast as writers progress down the page, their left margins increase while the right margins become uneven or diminished. Slant leans towards the right and the strokes are ready and firm. Rhythm is smooth and natural with good line quality. Pressure patterns are usually obvious with strong downward strokes and lighter upward strokes. Illegible signature. Slow writing resulting in a tremor. The general pattern for slow writing is stiff and labored. Slow writers will make carefully executed letter forms that are generally consistent and exact. Many strokes of writing are retracted and cramped. T bars are carefully placed and balanced, often with blunt endings. T dots are more rounded and close to the stem. Beginning strokes and word endings are generally blunt to the point that bulbs may be observed without the aid of magnification. Slow writers generally do not slant their writing as far right as the faster writers do. The margins are generally more even. Pressure is often monotonous. Writing may appear to be drawn instead of written. Poor line quality may result if the writer is not a proficient penman. Next heading, spatial relationships. Utilization of space. Utilization of space includes arrangement and alignment of the writing. Arrangement is based on the space available and the alignment refers to the baseline, real or imaginary. Next heading, size. Penmanship systems dictate normal size of writing. Young children are taught to write using larger strokes with lower case letters of 0.25 inches in height. By the time they master the basic letter forms, students are expected to reduce the writing size to half the original size, that is 0.12 inches. Size of writing will vary under different circumstances. Next heading, proportions. Proportions usually are consistent in writing regardless of the size of writing. When writers change the size of their writing, their letters remain proportional. Horizontal expansion also plays a part in establishing the identity of the writer and is considered part of spacing. Penmanship systems dictate the proper proportions. Upper looped letters are twice as high as the middle zone letters, and capitals can run as high as 3 times the middle zone letters. Middle zone letters include A, C, E, I, M, N, O, R, S, U, V, W and X. And letters with middle zone area include B, D, G, H, K, P, Q, Y and Z. Upper and lower loop letters without a distinct middle zone are F, J, L and T. The letter F is the only letter to fully extend into all three zones in cursive writing. Writers may vary the size of one of the zones in forming their letter F, just as they may emphasize a zone in other letter forms. Most handwriting systems mandate the upper extenders of D, P and T to be shorter than the other extended letters. The D, P and T extenders are 3/4 the height of B, F, H, K and L. The Palmer method extends the D to the same height as the other letters. Palmer is the only system that puts a loop in the letter D. Spacing. Heading. Writers are taught to space their letters uniformly with connecting strokes that are the same size between each letter. Writers are taught to space their letters evenly on a horizontal plane. The rules of writing dictate 2 letter spaces between the words. Sufficient space must be left between lines to prevent intermingling of upper and lower loops. Some writers crowd their writing with cramped letters and others spread their writing across the page. Utilization of space. Heading. When writers are given unlimited space, they will proceed to write in a size that is comfortable for them. Writing may be small or large, it may also be variable. A writer's utilization of space is affected by the parameters of the writing environment. A writer must adjust the size of his or her writing to fit into a specific area. Some writers plan accurately and space their work evenly in the space available, whereas others miscalculate and must compress some of their writing to fit in a tight space. How the writer adjusts the size to accommodate the available space is an identifying factor. Next, heading arrangement. Writers are instructed to arrange their writing on a page by leaving margins all around the writing area. Depending on the type of paper, writers are trained to leave a 1-inch margin at the top and bottom of their paper and a smaller margin along the sides. Deviations from these norms help to reveal a writer through the personal pattern of arranging margins. Next, heading alignment. The baseline is the imaginary line on which writing sits. Writing goes above and below the baseline but always returns to this imaginary line. An even return to the baseline is a significant feature because few writers bring all of their letters exactly to the baseline. Writers usually are consistent in their baseline. People are copying another's writing rarely give consideration to the baseline. Next, heading form. Form is not limited to the shape of the letters but includes the method of constructing and connecting the letters, including the initial and terminal strokes. Next, heading letter designs. The writing strokes consist of lines and curves in various directions forming individual letter shapes. Lines can be vertical, horizontal or diagonal. Curves are loops, circles are parts of circles. Letter designs are the most easily identifiable feature of handwriting. Forgers copy letter designs while disregarding other characteristics of writing. Each letter has a distinguishing element that makes it unique. Strokes of writing letters. Different way. Different methods. A, E, I, O, U. Example, T has a crossbar, I and J have a dot, and F has only a lowercase cursive letter that spans all three zones of writing because it has both an upper loop and a lower loop. The P letter can occupy both the zones if the upstroke is added. Many writers use more than one design for an individual letter. It is not unusual to see 2 or 3 different letter designs in one's handwriting as well as a slight variation in the form of each letter. Natural variation is present in every writer's handwriting. Everyone has a mental image of a learned letter design. Many of these designs deviate from the standard penmanship forms. A person may copy someone else's letter design that he or she admires. A writer may experiment with variations of letter design until finding one that is desirable, or may simply make a design that represents the letter form being created. Most people do not recognize the uniqueness of their individualized forms. Next, heading method of construction. Forgers will imitate letter forms, but they fail to follow the same method of construction of letters and words when they do so. Writers develop consistent habits regarding the construction of letter forms. They start their letters in approximately the same place, whether on the baseline, above or below it. They move the writing instrument in the same direction and join strokes at a similar location each time. They terminate their letters in a similar manner. A document examiner should carefully follow the direction of the writing line to determine the method of construction. Next heading, initial strokes. Significant aspects of letter forms are lead-in and terminal strokes that people devise to begin and end their letters. These are highly personalized strokes that have a high value in identifying a writer. Lead-in strokes are found at the beginning of letters and words. They may be straight, curved or hooked, long or short. The initial placement of the pen to begin each letter form is also a strong factor in identification because of the highly individualized nature of their placement. Forgers rarely copy the beginning point of a letter and writers rarely deviate from these habits, especially in their signatures. Next heading, terminal strokes. Terminal strokes are ending strokes on letter and words. They also may be straight, curved, hooked, long or short and are consistent with writers. These are also overlooked by forgers unless the terminal stroke is very distinctive. Medial strokes. Medial strokes are found between the initial and terminal strokes. They include the letter forms and the strokes used to connect the letters in a word in a cursive writing. Connecting strokes. Connecting strokes join the letter in words. They are also like ligatures. Letters in a word may be connected or disconnected. Connectors can consist of arches, garlands, angles or thready connections. Next heading, embellishments. Embellishments were once considered an important part of letter forms, but modern penmanship systems do not use embellishments. Calligraphers will embellish their letters with flourishes, but the average writer does not. Therefore, flourishes that appear in handwriting assist in the identification process. Flourishes are extra strokes added to letters to improve their appearance. These flourishes are curved and wavy lines added to the beginning or ending of letters. Hooks are little strokes made with an immediate change of direction, executed subconsciously by a writer. Hooks may be found at the beginning or ending of words, although some will appear in the middle. Ticks are similar to hooks but make an abrupt change of direction. Hooks generally have some curvature. Ticks are more angular. Next heading, individual characteristics. Individual characteristics are deviations from the system of writing taught and consequently are strong identifying characteristics when comparing handwriting samples. Their value is weighed by the number of people who make an individual characteristic. Some individual characteristics are copied by many people, others are rarely seen in handwriting. The more handwriting samples a document examiner studies, the more accurate the assessment of the value of an individual characteristic because the examiner knows how likely it is that a characteristic that will show up in other handwriting samples. Individual characteristics can be categorized as consciously acquired habits or as a subconscious acquisition. Consciously acquired habits are those the writer cultivates in his or her writing. The subconscious habits creep into handwriting without conscious awareness. Because the writer is not aware of these subconscious characteristics, they cannot be changed or deleted from his or her handwriting. Consciously developed habits are easier to modify, although a writer may forget to do so when attempting to disguise his or her handwriting. The most obvious consciously developed deviations are unusual letter designs, slant, speed of writing, and skill level achieved by the writer. Writers will practice penmanship until satisfied with their development. Writers often make adjustments without thinking about them. Utilization of space is one such example. A writer must adjust his or her writing to fit into the available space. He or she may not think about this while doing it. Although the writer is aware of adjusting the size of the writing, subconscious developments are more subtle. Most writers are not aware that these elements exist in their writing. Hooks and ticks may creep into their letter forms. Pressure patterns developed without awareness, deviations in other handwriting characteristics may go unnoticed. The more subconscious the habit, the stronger the identifying factor because of the writer's difficulty in changing these subconscious characteristics. Additional considerations. Heading. Once the document examiner has compared all of the basic handwriting characteristics of writing, additional determinations about the writer can be made based on the examiner's observations. First heading, evaluation of a skill level. A person develops a skill level that suits his or her needs. The writer cannot exceed this skill level. The line quality and the rhythm of the writing reveal that skill level. Next heading, grammar. Spelling and punctuations are important elements in handwriting identification along with the rules of grammar. Spelling and punctuation cannot be used exclusively to identify handwriting, but they can aid in identification. Next heading, range of writing. All characteristics that make up an individual's handwriting represents the range of the writer. This includes class characteristics as well as individual characteristics. All deviations from the method taught in all idiosyncrasies of the writer are part of the range of writing. This is the master pattern of the writer. Next heading, elimination. Any fundamental unexplainable handwriting characteristic that is not part of the master pattern indicates a different writer. Differences must be fundamental. Explanation for differences include accidentals or deliberate disguise. Outside factors such as health problems and aging also affect handwriting and can be the reason for significant differences between writing samples. Fundamental differences heading. Fundamental difference is an irreconcilable difference. Fundamental difference in handwriting that are significant include differences in line quality, pressure pattern, method of construction of letter and words, or subtle subconscious handwriting characteristics. Differences in letter forms are also significant but not necessarily fundamental differences. A forger must choose between maintaining good line quality and adhering to the letter forms of a model. If the forger concentrates on the line quality, the writing will not adhere to the model. If the forger adheres to the model, the line quality will suffer. Therefore, lack of adherence to the model or a poor line quality indicates a different writer. Poor line quality looks drawn or tremulous and frequently is drawn and not written. Drawn writing will have a different pressure pattern than natural writing. Because writing is a habit, the difference in the method of construction of letters and words is a fundamental difference. Conscious attention to the act of writing usually represents a writer trying to imitate someone else's writing. Subtle characteristics are small, inconspicuous habits of the writer that go unnoticed by most people. Examples of inconspicuous habits are hooks or ticks in the writing or unusual connecting strokes. Next heading, case study, baseline variation, background. While a manager was out of town in business, another employee forged and cashed his paycheck. The document examiner hired to identify the culprit was given access to the personnel files. There was no comparable handwriting. Question: can handwriting be identified when there are no similar letters for comparison? Answer: there are many characteristics of handwriting aside from letter forms such as size, proportion, spacing, connecting strokes and pressure patterns. Outcome: the document examiner noticed the fraudulent endorsement of the manager had an unusual baseline variation that was evident in one of the employees' handwriting. The company obtained additional request writing from the suspect. The culprit was identified and he returned the money he had taken illegally. Questions: 1. What is the foremost principle of handwriting identification? 2. When does the process of writing begin? 3. What is graphic maturity? 4. What is pen scope? 5. What are class characteristics? 6. What are individual characteristics? 7. What is slant? 8. How can a document examiner determine the speed of writing? 9. What is rhythm? 10. What is grip pressure? 11. What is meant by the method of construction? 12. What are the various types of ligatures? 13. What is line quality? 14. Name some of the characteristics of handwriting. Next chapter, factors that cause changes in handwriting. Factors that affect handwriting. Once a handwriter has reached the permanent condition of automatic writing, he or she has reached graphic maturity, which continues until some physical or mental disturbance interferes with the ability to write. Robert Saudek states that a person is capable of writing fluently, easily and automatically only under the following conditions. These are the ideal conditions. Number 1. The writer is familiar with the letters so that the mention of a letter conjures a graphic image of the letter in his or her mind. 2nd, the writer has control of the writing instrument and the mechanical factors of the paper, pen, writing surface do not interfere with the writing. 3rd, the writer is free of any physical impediment which would hinder his writing. 4. The writer knows how to spell the words and does not have to concentrate on the spelling. 5. The writer is writing in his or her native language. Obviously, there are other factors that affect writing such as mental illness, emotional state and even mood. The type of document being written may cause a person to write more formally and neatly. Many factors combine to affect handwriting. What are the basic factors that influence writing? The level of education attained will affect the development of writing. An illiterate writer makes clumsy, halting strokes. As writing skill increases, the writing flows smoothly and becomes well executed. If a child continues in school until reaching graphic maturity, his or her writing will be more highly developed than a student who drops out of school before mastering penmanship. Likewise, an adult who writes frequently, such as a white collar worker will exhibit more skill than a blue collar worker who does little or no writing in his or her job. Mechanical factors affecting handwriting. These include the writing instrument, the quality of the paper, writing surface, and the position of the writer when writing. It makes a difference whether the writer is standing, sitting, or trying to write under adverse conditions. Poor lighting can also affect writing. Cold or heat is another factor to consider. Poor conditions may adversely affect legibility. Physical well-being will cause changes in writing ability. Illness and injuries can alter a person's handwriting temporarily or permanently. Medication and substance abuse also interfere with handwriting. Physical handicaps play a part as well. These include loss of use of accustomed writing hand, blindness, and aging. The emotional state of the writer alters the appearance of his or her writing. When one is excited or angry, his or her writing is more expansive and hurried. Writing becomes compact when the writer is pensive and introspective. When one is tired, the writing line and the word endings tend to droop. Psychological factor. That is, the writer's physical makeup and personality influences the writing act. According to J.F. McCarthy, handwriting most certainly reflects some aspect of the writer's personality. Handwriting is in essence nothing more than a form of visual behavior, graphically recorded and relatively permanent. It is a result of a writer's physiological, psychological, environmental life. Lack of familiarity with the material being written impedes the flow of writing. Difficult words, foreign words, and complex concepts may interfere with the normal script. Mechanical factors. Mechanical factors play a part in changes in handwriting. A simple thing such as the change of body position may have an effect on the appearance of handwriting. The writing deteriorates when a writer attempts to write from an awkward position. If the writer is lying down, his or her orientation will be affected, and the ink in the pen may not flow properly, and the ink may not flow properly. Leaning across a bed distorts the appearance of the writing. What is the writer's normal writing position? What was the position when executing the document in question? Was the writer seated at a desk, standing, riding in a car? Was the paper on a flat surface, a ledge, a steering wheel of a car, or a lap? Document examiners should try to determine this information to weigh the effect on the handwriting. Lighting may affect the handwriting. Dim light makes it difficult for the writer to follow the line. Bright light may temporarily blind the writer so that his or her writing is distorted. Type of pen and paper can affect the writing. It is obvious that a broad pen point creates a different effect than a fine pen point. Ballpoint pens create a different writing line than a fiber tip or a fountain pen. Ink may not flow evenly, particularly with the ballpoint pen that goop on curves. Some papers are more porous, thus the ink will spread into the paper. Others have finishes that repel the ink. Some finishes on paper make writing easier. Poor quality paper can snag a pen, causing glitches in the writing. If the writer is having difficulty with pen or paper, he or she may have to change the pressure and speed of writing. A microscopic examination may reveal coarse paper or a poor ink flow. Document examiners try to duplicate the writing instrument environment. They experiment with different writing instruments on different kinds of paper. As stated in chapter 2, the writing surface affects the indentations in the paper. A rough writing surface can also create grooves and patterns on the paper. If writing is done on a soft surface, the pressure appears to be heavier because the indentations into the paper are deeper. A hard writing surface under the paper reduces the depth of the indentations in the paper. Without adequate support, the writer loses uniformity and pressure patterns are affected. People attempt to create conditions conducive to comfortable writing. Occasionally, this is not possible, so the writer has to adapt his or her writing to the conditions present. Writing may be done on various surfaces, such as a writing tablet, wooden table or a desk, a glass, a metal surface, even a body part. Do not confuse writing pressure with environmental factors. Of course, there are many non-traditional writing tools that have been used and must be examined by document examiners. For example, spray paint on walls and furniture, lipstick on mirrors, writing scratched into metal with a stylus, or chalk on a chalkboard. Time span heading. Handwriting changes over the course of one's life. It changes most likely from childhood to adolescence, and many change again when one reaches adulthood. It will develop until one reaches the graphic maturity, at which time subtle changes may continue to take place. It will decline as the aging process reduces one's skill level. Penmanship was once a major subject in classrooms around the country, but modern schools do not devote much time to teaching proper penmanship. With less emphasis on conforming to traditional writing systems, children are developing their own individual style of writing at an early stage. As children grow into adolescence, their handwriting develops and often shows drastic changes in many handwriting characteristics. Teenagers will experiment with different styles of writing, changing their letter forms until they find a style they like. By the end of teen years, a young adult's writing has stabilized into an adult style that may change gradually over the years. Graphic maturity is reached when movement is made from habituated neuromuscular patterns. This usually occurs when a person reaches adulthood around 21 years of age. The basic style has been adopted that generally continues throughout life, although various factors will alter and modify the writing. Most of the changes in nature handwriting occur gradually. However, a dramatic event in one's life can cause sudden changes in handwriting. President Nixon's writing changed drastically following Watergate. Writing of a man whose wife died of cancer changed so dramatically over the course of her illness that he had to sign new bank cards to match his new signature. Many changes take place as one grows older. Ordway Hilton lists some of these changes in his book, Scientific Examination of Question Documents. Handwriting skill declines in elderly writers. Legibility and design are affected. Coordination is impaired and other writing characteristics deteriorate. Writing lacks uniformity. Elderly writing develops tremor due to loss of muscle control. The quality of the writer suffers. Internal consistency is evident although the letter forms are deteriorating. Forgers sometimes copy handwriting from the wrong period of time when perpetrating a fraud. The examiner must be careful to compare writing from the proper time period, because the material written under different circumstances can affect the accuracy of the results of the examination. Heading: Health. A person's mental and physical health affects the ability to write. Therefore, the mental and physical condition of the writer needs to be taken into consideration when comparing handwriting, so that writing is taken from a similar set of conditions. Did the writer suffer from any illness, either chronic or transitory? Could an injury or an accident have altered the handwriting either temporarily or permanently? It is important to compare handwriting from a similar point of time under similar circumstances to compensate for these and other changes. A writer who is under severe stress from an accident or an excruciating pain will not write in his or her normal behavior. Handwriting will deviate sometimes to the point of not being recognizable or identifiable. A long-term debilitating illness such as cancer will cause handwriting to slowly deteriorate. It will not necessarily be a steady decline. There may be some temporary improvement in the writing, although writer never regains optimum skill level. Writers who lose their ability to write with their dominant hand learn to write with other parts of their body, like opposite hand, foot, or case of quadriplegics, pen held between their teeth. When a person becomes fluid in writing using an alternate method such as other hand writing, foot writing, many similar characteristics to his or her previous writing will be found. Mouth writing, although more awkward than handwriting, shows remarkable similarities to the previous writing styles. Once a handicapped writer has mastered writing in an alternate body part, the examiner may or may not be able to distinguish it from previous dominant hand writing. The mouth writing of the quadriplegic John Erickson is similar in many ways to her writing before her accident, with a slight loss of fluidity. Next heading: Blindness. Poor eyesight can interfere with one's handwriting ability. Although a person can write without looking at his or her signature, it is more difficult to execute fluid writing when the maker cannot check his or her progress. A sighted writer who becomes blind must rely on previous knowledge of graphic movement to continue writing without the ability to visually check the progress. There is a tendency for the blind writer to write continuously so as not to lose his or her place. Blind writers tend to rise in the middle of the page and drop as the writing hand is extended across the page. People born blind have more difficult time learning to write. They use the stylus to gauge spacing. Each letter is placed inside a box, using sides of the box to control the size and forms of letter. This gives writing a tilted appearance. Next heading: Mental health. A person's mental state can affect the appearance of writing. Mentally ill people often have difficulty expressing themselves in writing. Depending on the severity of illness, the writing may deteriorate into illegibility. Table 3.1: Drug effects. Number 1, tiredness. Number 2, dizziness. Number 3, nervousness. Number 4, spasm. 5, confusion. 6, tremor. 7, restlessness. 8, Parkinsonism. 9, tingling. 10, pain. 11, paralysis. 12, muscle relaxation. Severe disturbances may cause writing to become a series of lines. In some cases, short vertical strokes or horizontal wavy lines in others. None of these can be deciphered. In most cases, the mental illness does not diminish or destroy the habitual writing patterns. Suicide notes and letters usually show some deterioration of the quality of writing, although they exhibit characteristics of the normal writing of the person. Mental depression affects the handwriting but does not diminish and destroy the habitual characteristics. Drugs and medication. Every drug has an effect on the person taking it. Many of these effects are undesirable side effects. Some of these drugs will cause changes in people's writing style, even ability to write. There are two areas the document examiner must take into consideration. Medication prescribed to a patient for purposes of health restoration and drug abuse. Patricia Wellingham Jones tells us that almost every drug has many effects. One cannot state that a particular drug creates a particular result. Undesirable side effects can distort handwriting. Some of these adverse reactions are described in table 3.1. Confusion and dizziness may disturb the overall writing of an individual, causing overlapping of lines and distorted baseline. Euphoria causes increases in size of the writing and writing that drifts uphill. Nervousness and restlessness result in erratic pressure, tremor and other irregularities in writing. Spasms are sudden involuntary muscle contraction that create jerks and glitches in handwriting. Tremor is an involuntary uniform oscillation, although the direction of the writing temporarily and repeatedly. Tremor caused by caffeine. Caffeine is vibratory. Changes in the psychiatric state of the writer may affect the writing differently. Disturbed rhythm will probably be the most obvious. Depression usually causes writing to droop and to slant downward. Writers will also write downhill when they are tried. Some drugs will cause Parkinsonian symptoms, result in microphagia. It is small writing that trails off. Muscle relaxants can cause writing to trail off as well. Light, erratic and fading pictures can also be a result of muscle relaxation. Alcohol and drug abuse. In addition to the side effect of medication, drug abuse will cause other adverse effects on handwriting. Alcohol reduces inhibitions, causing larger, more rapid handwriting. As the level of intoxication increases, the writing becomes more slurred. Examples of size and spacing will occur as well. Alcoholics will have general deterioration in their handwriting over time as the disease worsens. The handwriting using may actually improve when the alcohol is intoxicated and deteriorate when sober. Alcoholism causes uncontrolled muscular movement, jerking and tremor, breaks in pen lines, irregular strokes and overwritten parts produce a erratic action without semblance of the order. Drug abuse can alter handwriting. Different types of drugs produce different side effects. Abuse over a period of time causes continual deterioration of the handwriting as well. A question of authenticity of the signature of a drug addict. Drug addict require comparison of signatures from the same time period and a possible. Next heading, accidentals. Accidental strokes or aberrations that occur as a result of a transitory incident, such as someone bumping the writer's arm or crumb on the table using a writing paper. These strokes are deviations from the intended path of the writer, who automatically jerks the window writing instrument back to its intended trajectory. These strokes are very rare. According to Ordway Helen in Scientific Examination of Questioned Handwriting, they occur once in about 200 signatures. Some examiners who are trying to demonstrate that a signature is genuine will state that the foreign divergences are not due to accidentals. In most cases, they are not. Guided hand. A guided hand signature is one in which the writer can get support from another person when attempting to write. The writer is usually informed. The result of the guided hand is frequently a signature does not remember. Guided handwriting is rare. It is also used as theory to support authenticity, with the characteristics of writing differ from the exemplars. Tremor in handwriting. Tremor is indicated by an involuntary, rhythmic, recurrent movement of the pen from side to side. These tremulous strokes are instant changes from desired direction of the pen leaves and attributed to nervous impulses reflecting the muscles, indicating loss of control of the pen. There are many different reasons that tremors occur in handwriting. Some of these have already been discussed, including gangs, illness and drug use. Other causes are writer's cramps and pathological psychiatric disorder. Surgical tremors resulting in a convulsive manner of writing are independent of the will and therefore beyond the control of the writer. These tremors are These tremors are often rhythmic to and fro movements that are practically impossible to imitate the same writing speed and pen pressure. Wavering and broken strokes forming the letters of a writer's signature will deviate from the normal style, but they remain sufficient individual characteristics to identify the writer. Tremor of illiterate, uneducated individual is more varied because of the unfamiliarity of the writing process. Although there is lack of control, the writing is strong. A strong illiterate writer can be distinguished from the lines of an experienced writer in poor health, which are usually lighter and more tremulous. Tremor of fraud or criminal behavior results in one is attempting to copy another's writing. B. Act of slowly drawing lines instead of drawing them causes corruption of the ventricle. The corrugation is a very fine side-to-side movement, can be seen most clearly under a microscope. Tremor is difficult to imitate. An error can easily be made by overlooking the line quality. Forgers trying to imitate tremor usually fail to capture the style of the writer. They make even to and fro movements instead of erratic deviations of tremor. This makes smooth curves and misplaces the tremor. Case study: drunk driving case. A man was arrested for drunk driving when he failed his observatory test. He was issued 3 tickets for driving under influence, driving while intoxicated, and crossing the center line. He signed the tickets, was taken to police station. He refused to take the breath analyzer test and was released. Subsequently, he received a signed release in the mail from the police indicating he had refused the breath analyzer. He had not signed the release. He had a document examiner to determine the origin of the question document. Poor line quality and illegible letter forms are the result of elderly informed writers. Question: the document examiner relied exclusively on 3 signatures. 3 signatures signed 20 minutes prior to the time of the question document. Why? Answer: the document examiner wanted comparative handwriting because the man had been drinking, not intricate. These were the only signatures that duplicated the conditions under which the question document would have been signed. Outcome: as a result of the document examiner's testimony, signature was proven to be bogus. In addition, man was found not guilty because he had a medical condition that had caused him to fail the field sobriety test. Questions. Number 1. What conditions must be present in order for a writer to be able to write fluently and automatically? What are some of the basic factors that affect handwriting? Give examples of mechanical factors that affect handwriting. How does the writing surface after handwriting? What are the stages of handwriting that occur over a person's lifetime? What effect does health have on handwriting? What are some of the effects of drugs on handwriting? What is tremor? What causes tremor? What is corrugation in writing and what causes it?